Hi everybody, Adam Steele from Hop Pole Studios here, and today we're going to be checking out the Toneforge Jeff Loomis amp. Jeff Loomis is an awesome guitar player, and this amp from Toneforge sounds really good. Because of the current lockdown situation in the UK, I'm going to have to do this from my little home office, but with this being a virtual amp, that shouldn't be a problem at all. So let's roll the intro and on we go. Okay, funny story. Looks like I'm going to do this from here after all. I'm back because, like an idiot, I managed to forget my iLock, which is what these things authorize to. So, we're going to switch around, use the other camera, and play around with the clean, the rhythm, and the lead sounds. Here we are, and I've got the Toneforge on the lead mode, as you can hear. I am using the Vola Oz ROA guitar, which is a very, very bright looking guitar. Very pretty, sounds like this. Yes, but it also cleans up really nicely. It's got a nice bright single coil neck pickup. So even on the high gain lead channel, I can go. So you can really hear how, even though that's really high gain, you can hear the single coiliness in that. I know that's not a word, but there you go. So let's work this backwards from lead all the way through to clean. Seeing as though I'm on a lead channel right now, I'm using the bridge humbucker most of the time in this guitar. It is very bright, so I'll roll the tone off a little. But this setup has pretty much the whole chain. So there is a setup that includes a compressor and a Tubescreamer that can go in front of the amp that do dramatically change the tone, both of them. Neither of them is on right now because the lead amp is a very high gain amp. And I suspect from looking at the stripes here that this is based on an EVH 5153. That's my suspicion. Although, even if that's true, I'm sure they couldn't confirm that because it'll be inspired by the amp rather than being, an official licensed thing. And the knobs here all do exactly what you would imagine they do, apart from there's this interesting one called Shred. Now, if I take the gain down quite a lot, you'll hear a drastic difference. There we go, one quick tuning later. It is quite cold in here. These strings are changing as I play them. This has a much lower gain sound. It's quite buzzy. If I switch to a neck pickup, we should get something not clean, but just different. Yeah, and of course with full gain, I barely touch it and it'll go crazy. So if you can hear a little bit of chattering there, this does have a gate inbuilt. If I turn the gate off, that's pretty much how any amp sounds with the gain, especially on a high gain amp, all the way up. But with that at a more reasonable level, you can just hear the amp doing, again, what amps do when you're really close with a guitar to some sort of high electromagnetic interference, like 2 monitors and all this rack of stuff. One thing that I have noticed about the gate on here is it's a little bit chattery. If I Let's leave it. You can hear it chatter a little bit. So something I would like to see in a future update for this is a bit of what I would call hysteresis on the gate, where it takes more effort to open the gate than it takes to close it, which means that you then end up with a much more steady gate. But that's not the main thing that you came to see with this. Oh, there's a tuner inbuilt as well, which I've used now a few times. There we go. I'm in E flat, which is why that's the way it is. So the gain does exactly what we were describing. Low, mid, and high do exactly what you would expect. I can make this just ultra metal. Sounds brutal, especially with the reverb and delay, which I'll get to in a second. In fact, I'll just turn them off and come back to them. Here's the raw kind of lead tone with the mid gain, controls roughly noon, without the effects. So it's definitely got some grunt to it, but it's designed for more of a lead tone. But there is a knob here that is called shred. And with the shred at 0, you get quite a full, punchy sound. And with shred all the way up, it cuts out a lot of mids. Not in the same way that the mid knob would do. It's more of a kind of a... It's like a combined presence, depth, and mid scoop kind of knob, and it sounds like this. Now, at absolute maximum, the shred does add what I would call a horrible top mid honk, but you can use that to your advantage. If I have the shred, I don't know, 70-ish, I can suddenly do more of a gent kind of thing. Yeah. For that extra amount of shred, I'd probably turn the lows up, and even the mids, and just turn up everything really to make up for the fact that that swallowed some of the mids. Yeah, I would definitely have a more brutal gate. In fact, I'm going to add a more brutal gate. And we'll be back in just a second. There we go. Now I'm using Reaper's own gate with this control, like I was saying, hysteresis. Suddenly I've got more of a... kind of angry bark. If I back the shred back... Nice. If I take the gain down and add in the Tubescreamer now, we should get a far more mid-punchy aggressive tone. Nice. Let's look at the cab section. So you can choose the JST matched cab, which means that Mr. Sturgis himself has chosen whichever cab, and you just go with it, and you get this. Sounds good to me. Then there's the classic cab, where you have a choice of 4 microphones, and again, keeps it simple. there's an interesting mid-peak in the 421, but I like the low end. Then there are 4 Bogren digital cabs included. Very sharp, very bright. Let's go with Model 1. And we'll go back to the amp and take the presence down, take the highs down. Because it looks like the cabinet's doing a lot of that work for us. Personally, I like to do things like EQ sculpting like that myself in the mix, but if you'd rather not, if you'd rather just have a sound you can work with, crank up the gain, crank up the mids to combat the fact that it really scoops them out, and that shapes the tone in a very different way. And off you go. Of course, the volume does change the sound because it's a master volume power amp thing. Yeah, I mean, we're still on the lead channel, but for a sound, that's very modern metal, scoopy metal. Now I'm going to take the cabinet back. You can actually load in your own impulse response as well, but I'm going to leave it back on the JST cab, and I'm going to add that presence back to work with the cab. So that's a lot more chunky than the Bogren digital ones. Rather than kind of mix ready scoopy, this is more kind of natural. So now I'll look at the reverb, because we've got different settings. We've got cloud. Nice. Sounds a bit weird on its own because it's got a huge inbuilt pre-delay, but I would imagine in a big, airy solo mix, that'll sound huge. What's chorale? Not bad, and of course you can change the tone, you can change the amount of the modulation. Oh, that's a lot of modulation. That sounded wibbly wobbly to me. Let's listen to Shimmer. I think Shimmer will work much more when we've got the clean tone going. Room will be what it says. Let's take the pre-delay down. Quite a lot. This is a really good mix tip. If you're finding that your solo just doesn't fit in the mix, if it's either too loud or too quiet and you can't find that middle point, it probably needs some space, like a bit of room reverb that suddenly makes it sit in the stereo field a little more and makes it sound that much bigger. It's easy to go overboard. Plate, my favourite. I do find that plate reverbs tend to sit in a mix much nicer than I do find that any other type fits, which means that you can have more of it and it doesn't become an obvious effect if you'd rather not have the reverb be something that really stands out. Cool. Spring reverb, my least favourite. Never did like spring reverb, that's a personal thing. And what is blood? That's got a huge pre-delay and sounds massive. This will be good for those big hair in the wind solos and probably for the clean as well. I like it. I can see that fitting in a mix. Let's turn that off for a minute and look at the delay, which is a relatively simple delay, but it does have some useful controls. You can sync it to the timeline, and as it usually stands, it sounds a bit like this. So it's a fairly straight delay pedal, echo pedal. Cool. Now there's width, which makes it stereo. All the way up is a bit much. I like to have that lower down, but not on mono. And then tone is the really interesting one for me, because you can make it a much more dark delay, which makes it less obvious. So like this. Doesn't have all of that top end, so it's not going to interfere if you start playing faster runs. But it's very much still there. So if I combine that setting now with that blurred sound, they're both on. Even that little flub at the end there still sounds nice through those. So that makes for a fantastic lead tone. There's a 4-band EQ if you need it, if your tone sounds right now but needs a little tweak to fit in a mix like this. Probably has a little bit too much 500 Hertz for my liking, so let's notch that down. Needs a 3K boost. I'm always a fan of a 10K boost on a solo to give it that shiny top end. Something I learned from Steve Vai. I'll leave the bass alone. So now I should get a slightly less boxy, slightly more toppy, airy sound. Okay, so what's last on here? Oh, there's this dynamics thing, which I'll come to in a second. Let's talk about rhythm. So I'm going to turn off all the delay and EQ and all that good stuff. And we'll come on to rhythm. So here's the rhythm amp as it stands. So with the master and the gain backwards, that's a pain in the backside. This amp looks, again, to me like a Mesa Road King. May be that, may not be that. Couldn't tell you for sure, but that's what it looks like to me. I've got one. I know what they look like. Sounds very tight to me. That's through the JST matched cab. No effects. No equalizer. I'm going to use the same EQ settings that I did before. That 3K poke isn't necessary. And on a rhythm sound, I do like quite a heavy low end bump, and you'll see why in a second. Let's get the Tubescreamer in there, maybe back the gain off on the amp and see how that sounds. That sounds absolutely massive. Now we go to this dynamics section, and what I can do is I can choose a particular frequency, usually around 100 Hz-ish, maybe a little higher. If this has too much chug 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 in the bottom, let's see this without this intensity at 0. That's going to swallow up a lot of the mix and really take over. And what this can do is, back in the day, engineers used to use Waves C4, the multiband plugin, and we would disable 3 bands and just use one that focused in on this chug 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 area and just compress that a little bit to tame that woof woof woof. But we still wanted that overall big feeling from guitars, which is why we didn't just cut the low end entirely with an EQ. So what this does is that in a nutshell. So without it, we get this real sub. And if I turn the intensity up, watch this blue line dip. And what that means is if I pick harder so there's more high frequency, then it actually kind of restores the low end on those hits. Whereas if I've got some real palm mute chugs going on that are all low end, it really tames them. But then if I do something that's got quite a lot of high note information in the middle of the rhythm part, like... You'll have seen that duck down on the click, click, clicks of me hitting, but it didn't take away on the rest of the notes, so it still sounded full. Again, without just having an EQ make it sound like it's coming through a radio. This is roughly my preferred settings on something like a Mesa Road King. And it looks like a big bass and treble bump and a big mid scoop. And it is, but the amp is very mid-voiced. And so this just kind of offsets it. If I turn the tubes to EL34s, this is my favourite thing about this amp. This is going to jump out the speakers now. Here's 6L6. Here's the EL34s. That just sounds really angry. And I can easily see myself using that sound with the EL34s as a rhythm on some really heavy tracks. Now that is with the Tubescreamer in. If I take that out, it's a bit more of an old school metal sound. And I would definitely need to lower the bass response on the amp to work with that. But with the Tubescreamer, of course, that controls all that. The other option is I could throw the compressor in instead. which is a very different sound. It doesn't clean the low end up. But it does make the mids jump out a bit more. So if I lowered the bass response on the amp to match with the compressor. So yeah, a compressor before even a rhythm amp can be really, really useful. Now let's move on to cleans. Now this is where it gets really interesting because, it's matched a cab for us. We can turn on the lovely echo and delay and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to keep this mid scoop on the amp. In fact, I'm going to go even further with it. And I'm going to leave everything else as is, including leaving on the compressor. And on the neck pickup, the single coil of this, I should get a nice big full sound. That sounds nice. Needs a lot more top end though for me to really sparkle through. So let's turn up the high presence and the gain, because even with the high gain on this amp, it's not crunchy. Take some lows out of that and really bring up the crossover frequency on this de-mudding thing. That sounds really nice. Now, let's play with clarity. So this is where we play with the clarity, because I think this is another one of those mid-scoopy kind of tone shaping options that makes things easy. Because this sounds great, but let's see what this does all the way up. Yeah. That completely eliminates the problem that a lot of clean amps have with kind of a low mid build up. So suddenly this will fit in a mix with the clarity cranked up, and I can probably have a bit more low end back now and not have to have the high end presence quite so high. Because this is quite a bright set of pickups on this guitar. We should have more top end than this, and now we do. Beautiful. I'll bet you can make some fantastic sounds out of this. I'm out of time for the day, unfortunately. I was hoping to make a track and put it all together for this. So apologies, but I am very much running on a limited time budget right now because of family and such. So that is everything that the Toneforge Jeff Loomis can do. And like I said earlier, apart from the gate, which I hope they can change or add an extra thing like a 1.1 update. Other than that, this is incredible. This is done. This is brilliant. So this is probably going to end up as one of my go-to virtual amps when I'm not playing with the real stuff. So back to me in the studio. hope you enjoyed this, hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching. As you can see, I am actually in the studio, but very briefly I'm here and I'm gone again. And it's just me, there's nobody in here, social distancing, all that kind of stuff. Very much applies because there is just me, but because I'm running around, yeah, had to do this one from home. But yeah, thanks to the Toneforge guys for sending this over. This isn't a paid review, this is just, hey, here's a plugin, see what you think. And I very much enjoyed it, especially on bass. Blended in with that cleaner low signal, that's very, very me. So yeah, hope you found this useful, and stick around, hit the subscribe button, join as a Patreon, there's all sorts of stuff coming up on the channel as per usual. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Hey everyone, that might be the end of the video, but if you fancy carrying on this conversation, we have a Discord server, link is in the description. We're also on Patreon, which is something you can really help us with. We also are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Hot Pole Studios. See you there.